chandeliers inside the plaza glittered like frozen stars, casting warm gold over a sea of tuxedos, champagne flutes, and whispered ambition. It was the kind of room Declan Merrick had always worshipped, where wealth floated in the air like perfume and power rippled with every handshake. Tonight, he believed he was finally clawing his way back into relevance after a year of humiliating losses. He straightened his tailored jacket, rehearsing the pitch that might salvage his collapsing career. Then the doors opened. A hush swept across the ballroom, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the string quartet faltered for a heartbeat. Declan followed their gaze. A woman stepped through the entrance, framed by soft winter lights spilling in from Fifth Avenue. Her gown shimmered like liquid silver. Her posture was steady, elegant, almost regal. And though 7 years had carved distance between who she was and who she had become, Declan felt his stomach cave inward. Harper, the wife he had discarded, the woman he had blamed for everything, the one he thought would crumble without him. But it wasn't Harper alone who stunned the room. A tall man walked beside her, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed, carrying the quiet confidence that comes only from the kind of wealth Declan had spent his whole life chasing. Silas Hawthorne, billionaire, founder of Hawthorne Dynamics, a man untouchable by anyone in Declan's orbit. And then there were the children. 3 of them. 2 boys and a little girl with dark curls and bright, curious eyes, each one holding Silas's hand, each one wearing the unmistakable markers of the Hawthorne legacy. Declan's throat closed. His fingers loosened around his champagne glass until it slipped, shattering against the marble floor. People stared not at the mess, but at him. At the man who once threw Harper away, now watching her walk back into his world with a family more powerful than anything he could have imagined. And Harper, she finally lifted her eyes to him. Her expression was calm, unreadable, unshaken. And in that single look, Declan realized he wasn't prepared for what was coming next. Long before the plaza lights reflected off her silver gown, Harper Winslow had lived a life so small it barely cast a shadow. Back then, Brooklyn winters seeped through the thin walls of the studio apartment she shared with Declan Merrick. The radiator rattled more loudly than their conversations, and the only warmth she truly felt was the hope she clung to, fragile, desperate, and painfully naive. Harper worked as a project support assistant at a modest investment office near Atlantic Avenue. The pay was low, the commute long, but she believed she and Declan were building a future. She'd rise before dawn, slipping out quietly so Declan could sleep for his big day, as he called it. He always had a big day coming, some interview, some opportunity, some vague promise of success, yet somehow it was Harper who carried every burden. At night, she returned exhausted, sometimes with grocery bags tearing at the handles, but Declan rarely looked up from his phone. He criticized her salary, her clothes, her cooking. "You have no drive, Harper," he'd say. "No ambition. I can't carry both of us." The irony stung every time. She was the one carrying them. Still, she defended him to coworkers, to neighbors, to herself. She thought love meant understanding the broken pieces of a man and fitting herself around them. She blamed her childhood for that belief. A drunk father, a mother who left without looking back, an adolescence filled with patching wounds no one apologized for. Harper had always been the one who stayed, the one who tried. Then came the day she found herself staring at 2 faint lines on a pregnancy test. She stood frozen, her heartbeat trembling between joy and fear. She imagined Declan smiling, holding her close, telling her everything would change for the better. She imagined a future worth fighting for. But when she told him, Declan didn't smile. His face twisted with irritation, as though she'd handed him a bill he couldn't pay. "We can't afford this," he snapped. "You can barely keep your job. Do you expect me to raise a child in this dump?" Harper swallowed the hurt, telling herself he was shocked, that he only needed time. But she knew something was shifting quietly, dangerously, inside the man she had chosen. And when she noticed Declan dressing better, staying out later, coming home, smelling like perfume she didn't wear, the truth whispered at the edges of her mind. She just wasn't ready to hear it. Because the betrayal waiting for her was far worse than anything she imagined. The change in Declan didn't come suddenly. It seeped in slowly, like a draft Harper couldn't locate, chilling her before she even realized she was cold. He began spending more time at the Merrick Holdings office in Midtown, claiming new responsibilities, late-night deadlines, high-stakes meetings she was too tired to understand. Harper wanted to believe him. She needed to. But reality doesn't bend just because you want it to. He started leaving the apartment wearing cologne she didn't recognize, sharper and more expensive than what he usually wore. His shirts were freshly pressed, his hair styled with a meticulousness that didn't match their life of budget groceries and overdue electric bills. Once, she found a receipt in his coat pocket, a lunch bill from a restaurant on Park Avenue she had never set foot in. The amount equaled her entire week of food expenses. When she asked, he sighed dramatically, as though her concern was another inconvenience on a growing list. Clients expect a certain lifestyle, Harper. He wouldn't understand. My job is about appearances. But it wasn't appearances he was chasing, it was validation, admiration, a world where nobody knew he grew up scraping by. And Harper, with her quiet resilience and modest dreams, suddenly felt like a reminder of a life he wanted to shed. Then came the first real crack. Late one evening, Harper walked into the living room, carrying a tray with tea. Declan was on the couch, phone angled away from her. She caught a glimpse of a message, something playful, intimate, followed by a heart emoji. Before she could react, he locked the screen and plastered on a smile too quick to be honest. "Work thing," he said flatly. "Go to bed." She nodded, unable to speak past the pressure in her chest. She told herself not to assume the worst. Stress could make anyone unreasonable. Men sometimes vented to coworkers. Maybe she was reading too much into it. After all, Declan wasn't perfect, but he was her husband. Wasn't marriage supposed to allow mistakes? But as days passed, Declan grew distant in a way that wasn't stress, it was detachment. He barely touched her stomach anymore, barely asked about the baby. Nights became silent, meals became lonely. Harper found herself whispering to the unborn child, just to feel heard. One morning, she reached for Declan's jacket to hang it up and froze. A smear of lipstick, deep, scarlet, nothing Harper owned, stained the collar. Her knees weakened. Her breath fractured. But the worst part wasn't the stain. It was the sudden realization that Declan wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. And that meant something far more devastating was coming. Harper stared at the lipstick stain as though it were a wound bleeding through Declan's pristine life. It was too bright, too bold, too deliberate. The kind of shade worn by a woman who never doubted her place in a room. A woman who didn't fear being discovered. A woman who believed she had already won. Her first instinct was denial, not because she trusted Declan, but because the alternative meant her entire world was a lie. She walked to the bathroom, gripping the jacket so tightly her knuckles whitened. The mirror reflected a pale, exhausted version of herself. Eyes rimmed with worry, cheeks hollow from long work hours and pregnancy nausea. Harper felt small, fragile, replaceable. She placed the jacket on the counter and whispered to her reflection, "Ask him. Just ask." But when Declan came home that night, confidence spilling off him like expensive cologne, her resolve crumbled. He walked in with a grin that didn't reach his eyes, humming under his breath as though life had never been sweeter. Harper approached cautiously. "Declan, can we talk?" He didn't even look up. "Later. I'm starving." "Now," she repeated, her voice wavering. "It's important." His sigh was long and theatrical. "What is it this time?" She held up the jacket. Declan froze, but only for half a second before his expression shifted into irritation, then contempt. "Seriously? You're snooping through my things now?" "I wasn't snooping," she said softly. "It fell. I picked it up." "Declan, whose lipstick is this?" He laughed a cold, dismissive laugh that made her skin prickle. "Clients wear lipstick, Harper. Women hug. They lean in. They talk. Not everything is an affair." Her throat tightened. "But this, it looks intentional." "That's because you want it to be intentional," he snapped. "You need drama to distract yourself from your own failures." "Is my now." The words sliced through her. Failures. As though she hadn't held their crumbling life together with bare, bleeding hands. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a venomous whisper. I'm tired of this insecurity. It's embarrassing. You're embarrassing. Her body swayed. The room tilted. The baby fluttered weakly inside her, as if sensing her fear. Declan brushed past her and tossed the jacket onto the couch. Wash it. I have a breakfast meeting tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Harper stood frozen, her heart pounding against her ribs. Something inside her shifted, not a break, but a fracture spreading wide enough for truth to pour through. He didn't love her. He didn't fear losing her. He had already chosen someone else. And the moment she discovered who that someone was, her entire world would collapse. Harper didn't sleep that night. She lay awake listening to the uneven rhythm of Declan's breathing, her hand resting protectively over her small but growing belly. Every kick, every flutter reminded her of the tiny lives inside her lives she wished she could shield from the storm brewing in their home. By morning, Declan was already gone, leaving behind the faint scent of cologne and the untouched breakfast she'd prepared. A note lay on the counter. Late meeting. Don't wait up. That sentence, once familiar, now felt like a warning. Harper tried to distract herself at work, reviewing spreadsheets and double-checking client reports. But her thoughts drifted again and again to the lipstick stain, the messages, the sudden distance in Declan's eyes. Finally, during her lunch break, she made a decision, one she'd avoided for weeks. She would visit Declan's office. Just to talk. Just to understand. The Merrick Holdings building on Park Avenue towered above her like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. Harper stepped inside, one hand pressed to the small of her back, breathing slowly to steady her nerves. The lobby receptionist, impeccably polished, gave her a polite but strained smile. Mrs. Merrick. I didn't know you were coming. Harper forced a gentle nod. Is Declan available? The receptionist hesitated, then gestured toward the glass elevator. He's in conference room B. End quote. Harper thanked her and walked toward the hallway, her steps light but her heartbeat heavy. She paused at the door, hand hovering over the handle. A woman's laugh drifted from inside, light, breathy, intimate. Harper's stomach tightened. She pushed the door open. There, sitting casually on the edge of the conference table, legs crossed and leaning in far too close to Declan, was a young woman with sleek blonde hair and bold red lipstick, the exact shade Harper had seen on the collar. A coffee stain of shock spread across Declan's face as he jerked upright. Harper? What are you doing here? The woman straightened, uncowed, her smile sharp and triumphant. You didn't tell me your wife was dropping by. Harper felt the room tilt. Air thinned. The betrayal she had feared was no longer a whisper, it was a billboard. Declan, Harper whispered, how long? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence screamed louder than any confession. Her vision blurred, and she clutched the edge of the doorframe to stay standing. The babies kicked as if reacting to her pain. The blonde woman folded her arms smugly. We were just discussing the European expansion. You know, the one Declan said you'd never understand. Harper felt something inside her crack cleanly, irreversibly. And then Declan said the one sentence that shattered everything. Declan didn't flinch, didn't soften, didn't even pretend. Instead, he exhaled impatiently, as if Harper were an interruption to his carefully curated life rather than the woman carrying his children. This, he said, gesturing vaguely between himself and the blonde woman, was inevitable. Harper blinked. Inevitable? Yes, he snapped. Harper, look at you. Exhausted, distracted, always emotional. I need someone who can keep up, someone who enhances my image, not drags it down. The blonde woman smiled like she'd already won a trophy. Harper felt the sting in her chest before she felt the tears. Her hand instinctively covered her belly, shielding the small lives within her. Declan, we're having twins. He didn't soften, not even for a second. I didn't ask for twins, he said coldly. I didn't ask for this timing. I can't build my career while babysitting your problems. Your problems, as if her pregnancy, their pregnancy, was a burden she had forced onto him. Harper's breath hitched. How long has this been happening? Long enough, he said, shrugging. And honestly, it's better this way. You can move back to Brooklyn, focus on whatever it is you do. I need freedom right now, not responsibility. The blonde woman added lightly, we're planning a trip to London next month. First class, of course. Harper stepped backward, gripping the wall to keep from collapsing. A wave of dizziness washed over her, sharp, disorienting. The babies fluttered anxiously. Declan looked annoyed. Are you seriously doing this here? Harper, don't make a scene. It's unprofessional. Something inside her snapped, not loudly, not visibly, but with a quiet finality that changed everything. She straightened, swallowed her tears, and forced her voice steady. You're choosing her? No, Declan said. I already chose. The room blurred. Her pulse roared in her ears. She stumbled toward the exit, barely hearing the receptionist call her name. Every step down the hallway felt heavier, more painful, as though gravity itself wanted her to fall. Outside, the cold wind slammed into her. Her knees buckled. She leaned against a stone pillar, gasping for breath. Pain tore through her abdomen, sharp, foreign, terrifying. The twins kicked frantically. Not now. Please, not now. Her vision dimmed. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers, trying to unlock it, trying to call for help, but her hands wouldn't obey. Another contraction of pain ripped through her. She slid down the pillar, cradling her stomach, fighting to stay conscious. A passerby shouted, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Harper tried to respond, but only a whisper escaped. And then she felt the warm rush of something down her leg, something that told her the nightmare had only just begun. The world around Harper dissolved into a blur of car horns, footsteps, and cold February wind. She clung to consciousness, her back pressed weakly against the stone pillar outside Merrick Holdings. Her breaths came in short, panicked bursts as another wave of pain tore through her abdomen. The twins, her last fragile anchor of hope, felt like they were slipping away. She tried again to lift her phone, but her fingers trembled uncontrollably. The sidewalk tilted. People walked past, some glancing briefly, others too absorbed in their lives to notice the pregnant woman crumpling to the ground. Until one man stopped. A tall figure in a charcoal overcoat knelt beside her, blocking the wind. His voice, low and steady, cut through the chaos. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Harper blinked, her vision fractured. The man's face came into focus, sharp jawline, dark eyes filled with concern, not the cold indifference she was used to. His hair was slightly tousled, like he had stepped out of a meeting and into a crisis without hesitation. I need help," she whispered, clutching her stomach. "You're bleeding," he said gently. "Stay with me. I'm calling an ambulance." She felt his coat wrap around her shoulders, heavy, warm, smelling faintly of cedar and something expensive. The gesture was intimate in a way Declan's touch hadn't been for months. "Don't talk," he said as he dialed 911. "Just breathe. I've got you. Paperos." Tears slipped down Harper's cheeks, not from the pain, but from the unexpected kindness of a stranger when the man she loved had left her to fall alone. "What's your name?" he asked. Harper. "Harper, I'm Silas," he said, his hand steadying her as another spasm hit. "You're safe now. Help is on the way. Silas." The name rang faintly in her mind, as if she'd heard it somewhere before, but the pain clouded everything. Her body shook violently. "It's too early," she gasped. "The babies?" His expression shifted, soft but fierce, a look of someone who refused to let go. "You focus on breathing. I won't let anything happen to you. Do you understand?" Her fingers curled weakly into the sleeve of his coat, as if anchoring herself to the only solid thing left in her world. Sirens approached in the distance. Silas squeezed her hand, grounding her. "You're going to make it, Harper. Stay with me." His body. But the darkness was pulling harder now, her body growing limp despite her fight. She felt the world dim, her grip loosening. And just before everything went black, Harper heard Silas say something that would change the course of her entire life. Harper woke to the sterile scent of antiseptic and the low hum of machines. Her eyelids felt impossibly heavy, as though stitched shut by exhaustion and grief. When she finally managed to open them, soft white hospital lights blurred into focus. A curtain swayed gently from the air vent above her. Then she saw him. Silas Hawthorne sat beside her bed, still wearing the same charcoal overcoat from earlier, now draped over the back of the chair. His elbows rested on his knees, hands clasped, head bowed in a posture that suggested he'd been waiting a long, long time. At the sound of her stirring, he looked up. "You're awake," he said, relief softening the edges of his voice. Harper tried to speak, but her throat tightened. The babies." Silas's expression shifted, gentle, mournful. He reached for the call button and pressed it before answering. "Let the doctor explain. You shouldn't." "No," Harper whispered. "Tell me." He hesitated. Not because he wanted to lie, but because he searched for the least painful truth in a world where none existed. "I'm sorry, Harper. They couldn't save them." The words detonated inside her. Everything went silent. The world collapsed inward. Her hands flew to her stomach, now hollow beneath the blankets, and she broke quietly at first, then with heartbreaking intensity. Silas stood immediately, moving closer without touching her, giving her space to grieve but refusing to let her face it alone. "I failed them," she cried. "I failed my babies." "No," Silas said firmly. "You didn't fail anyone. Someone failed you." The door opened, and a nurse entered with gentle footsteps. But Harper barely heard her over the roar of her own loss. Silas stepped back to give the nurse room, but he didn't leave. Not even when the doctor explained the stress, the trauma, the dangerous level of blood loss. Not even when Harper's tears slowed into tremors of shock. As the doctor exited, Silas approached again, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I'm not your family," he said softly. "But you were alone out there, and I won't let that happen again. You deserved better than what happened to you." Harper swallowed hard. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Silas hesitated for the first time. His jaw flexed, and something unspoken flickered in his eyes. "Because, Harper, you matter more than you think." Before she could ask what he meant, the door creaked open again. A hospital administrator walked in, holding paperwork with Declan Merrick's name stamped across the top. And the expression on the woman's face told Harper the nightmare with Declan was far from over. The administrator stepped into the room with the stiff posture of someone delivering news she wished she didn't have to give. Her badge caught the overhead lights as she approached Harper's bedside, a folder clutched tightly in her hands. "Miss Winslow," she began gently, "we need to review a few documents with you regarding your insurance and emergency contacts." "Dude. 18 dude." Harper pulled the blanket closer, her fingers trembling. "Insurance? I thought everything was already filed." The woman hesitated. "It was under your husband's plan, but when the hospital contacted Mr. Merrick to confirm coverage," she exhaled, choosing her words with surgical caution. "He declared you were no longer his responsibility and requested your file be removed from his account." Silas stiffened beside Harper's bed, the muscles in his jaw tightening. Harper blinked in disbelief. What? The administrator opened the folder, revealing Declan's signature scrawled across a cancellation form. "He also instructed us not to contact him again regarding your condition." Harper's breath shattered. Even after losing the twins, even after collapsing in front of his building, Declan had still found a new way to abandon her. Silas stepped forward. "You're telling me this woman nearly died, and her husband had you remove her from coverage while she was still in surgery?" The administrator swallowed. "We informed him of the risks," he insisted. A hot flush of embarrassment, grief, and disbelief surged through Harper. She felt exposed, humiliated, discarded all over again. Declan hadn't simply left her emotionally, he had erased her as if she were an inconvenience he couldn't afford. Silas's voice dropped to a controlled, icy tone. "I'll take care of the hospital bill. Immediately. Remove her from every Merrick record and place all expenses under Hawthorne Group's corporate account." The administrator blinked, startled. "Of course, Mr. Hawthorne. I'll update everything right away." Harper turned to him, her eyes glistening. "You don't have to do that. You barely know me." Silas met her gaze with unwavering sincerity. "Harper, no one deserves to be left alone in a hospital bed, especially after what you've lived through. This isn't charity. It's humanity. Her throat tightened. No one had defended her like that, not ever. The kindness felt foreign, almost frightening in its sincerity. The administrator exited quietly, leaving Harper and Silas in the soft hum of machines and fading daylight. Harper wiped a tear from her cheek, embarrassed by her vulnerability. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to," he replied. "Just focus on healing. I have to 7 intensive of lof." But before Harper could respond, her phone, still cracked from the fall, buzzed on the bedside table. It was a message from a number she didn't recognize, and the first line made her blood run cold. Because someone else knew what Declan had done, someone who warned her this was only the beginning. The phone vibrated again, its cracked screen glowing faintly in the dim hospital room. Harper's heartbeat quickened as she reached for it, her fingers trembling. Silas watched her quietly, the protective concern in his eyes sharpening as he sensed her anxiety. The message preview flashed. "You deserve to know the truth. Declan didn't just abandon you, he set you up." Harper's breath caught. She opened the message. "I don't know if you remember me. I used to work at Merrick Holdings. I left when I realized what your husband was doing behind your back. You weren't fired by accident. You were framed." Her vision blurred as she continued reading. "Declan had debts, big ones. He moved money out of the company accounts. When the audit began, he blamed you. Said you were unstable, forgetful, overwhelmed. He let them believe you stole from the firm. You lost your job so he could keep his." Harper's stomach twisted. No, that can't be true. But deep down, she knew it could. She knew exactly what Declan was capable of. She thought losing the twins was the worst thing he'd ever done to her. She was wrong. Silas stepped closer. "Harper, what does it say?" Her fingers tightened around the phone. "He didn't just leave me. He destroyed me, on purpose." Silas's jaw clenched, a storm brewing behind his steady exterior. "Let me see." Harper hesitated, then handed him the phone. His eyes moved across the screen, darkening with every line he read. "This wasn't negligence," he said quietly. "This was cruelty, calculated cruelty." Harper pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. "Why would he do that? Why ruin me?" Silas exhaled slowly. "Because men like Declan don't accept consequences. They rewrite them." The phone buzzed again. Another message. "If you want proof, I have everything. Emails, transfers, screenshots. He stole over $200,000. You were the scapegoat." Harper's breath hitched. 200,000. More than she had ever seen in her life. And Declan had gambled her entire future to protect himself. Tears stung her eyes, not just from grief, but from a rising, burning sense of injustice. For the first time, anger burned bright enough to drown out the sorrow. Silas placed a hand gently but firmly over hers. "Harper, listen to me. You're not alone anymore. Whatever he did, whatever he destroyed, we can rebuild it. We can fight back." She shook her head. "Silas, I don't even know where to start." He leaned closer, his voice calm and certain. "We start with the truth. And to 19. Just then, her phone buzzed a third time. This message had only 2 words. Words that froze her blood. "He's watching." For a long moment, Harper couldn't breathe. The message on her cracked screen glowed like a threat carved into ice. "He's watching." Her fingers tightened reflexively around the phone until her knuckles paled. The room suddenly felt smaller, colder, as if Declan's presence had slipped through the walls. Silas immediately stepped closer, his voice low, steady. "Harper, look at me." She did, barely. "No one is getting near you," he said firmly. "Not while I'm here." His certainty anchored her, but fear still clawed underneath her ribs. "Silas, what if he knows I survived? What if he's trying to finish what he started?" "He won't," Silas answered without hesitation. "Hospitals have security, and he has no legal grounds to enter this place, now that he's removed himself from your records." But Harper knew Declan never played by rules, only by opportunities. A soft knock interrupted them. A nurse stepped in, carrying a tray. She offered a polite smile, but her eyes flicked toward Silas, lingering with a spark of recognition. "Miss Winslow," she said, setting the tray down. Your visitor authorization list. I need to update it, since your husband requested to remove himself. Harper swallowed. Who else is on the list? No one yet, the nurse replied gently. Not unless you want to add someone. Silas straightened. Put my name down. N1 Shao. The nurse blinked, surprised. Full name? Silas Hawthorne. Her eyebrows shot up. Not unusual, his name did that to people. But she wrote it carefully, her pen trembling slightly. Will notify security. Only authorized individuals may enter from this point. She left, and the door clicked softly behind her. Harper exhaled shakily. I don't want Declan anywhere near me. He won't be, Silas said again, his tone darkening with something protective and dangerous. Not after what he's done. Harper looked down at the sheets, twisting the fabric between her fingers. Silas? That message. Someone else knows what Declan did, someone who might be in danger too. We'll track them, Silas said. But first I need you stable. None of this matters if you're not safe. Safe. The word made her throat tighten. She hadn't felt safe in months, maybe years. And now a stranger, a man she barely knew, was stepping into that void with a certainty she didn't fully understand. Silas softened his voice. Harper, I need to ask, is there anyone else who might contact you? Anyone who knew what Declan was doing? A single name rose in her memory, hesitant, vulnerable, trembling. Maybe, she whispered, but I don't know if she's still alive. Silas froze. She? Harper nodded slowly. The woman Declan cheated with, but wanted Dazavis. She lifted her eyes to Silas, fear widening them. I think she's the one who sent the message. Silas's brows tightened, but he didn't interrupt. He simply waited calm, steady, while Harper gathered the courage to speak the name she had swallowed for months. Her name is Talia Brooks, Harper whispered. She was Declan's assistant. Blonde, young, ambitious, the one with the lipstick. Silas nodded once. The woman you saw in the conference room. Harper looked down at her, shaking hands. I thought she destroyed my marriage. I blamed her for everything. But now, after that message, I'm not sure she was the villain. Not entirely. Silas leaned closer. You think she knows the truth about Declan? Harper nodded. Declan never told me much, but he bragged around the house when he thought I wasn't listening. Talia handled all his schedules, meetings, and finances. If anyone knew he funneled money out of Merrick Holdings, it was her. Silas considered this carefully. If she turned on him, there's a reason. Harper swallowed hard. Because Declan doesn't let people walk away from him. Not cleanly. A chill ran down Silas's spine, visible even in the soft hospital light. He moved his chair closer to her bed, grounding her with his presence. What happened between them? He asked. Harper shook her head. I don't know. But a week before I lost the twins, Declan came home furious. I heard him shouting into his second phone. He kept saying, you signed up for this, you don't get to back out now. Silas's expression darkened. Back out of what? I wish I knew, but the last thing I remember hearing him say was, if this blows up, you go down with me. Silas exhaled slowly, too slowly. Then Talia is either terrified or already in danger. Harper's breath hitched. Silas? What if something happened to her? What if that message was a last attempt to warn me? He met her Gaza. We'll find her. Not for Declan, for you. You deserve the truth. Before Harper could respond, a sharp knock startled them both. A security guard stepped inside, looking uneasy. Miss Winslow, we need to inform you. Someone tried to enter the maternity wing asking for your room number. Harper's blood turned to ice. Silas stood instantly, his posture tall and commanding. Who? The guard swallowed. A man, dark hair, mid-30s, said he was your husband, but when we asked for ID, he ran. I have seventation. Harper covered her mouth, her pulse pounding in her ears. Declan. He was here. He was looking for her. And he wasn't supposed to know where she was. Silas moved in front of her protectively, his voice a quiet storm. How did he find this hospital? The guard hesitated, then answered. Because someone inside gave him your location. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Harper's pulse thudded violently in her throat as the guard's words settled like ice across her skin. Someone inside the hospital, someone with access, had given Declan her location. Silas's expression hardened, a quiet fury sharpening every line of his face. He stepped closer to the guard, his voice controlled but lethal. "Who authorized him? Who gave him her room number?" The guard swallowed. "We don't know yet. But the nurse's station reported a login under a staff ID about 20 minutes ago, right before the man showed up." Harper grabbed the railing of her bed, her breath shaking. Why would someone help him? He made it clear he didn't want me on his insurance. He abandoned me. Silas turned back to her, expression softening slightly. "Because Declan is desperate now. Desperate men make reckless moves." "But why?" Harper whispered. "What does he want from me now? I have nothing left to take." Silas hesitated. "You have the truth, and the truth can ruin him." Harper's stomach twisted. She thought losing the twins was the end of her story with Declan, but it was only the beginning of something darker, more dangerous. The security guard cleared his throat. "Miss Winslow, for your safety, we're moving you to a private floor. Restricted access only. No visitors unless cleared by Mr. Hawthorne or hospital administration." Harper blinked. "Private floor?" Silas nodded once. "I requested it the moment I knew Declan was involved." "In?" The guard looked between them, visibly relieved someone capable had taken charge. "We'll escort her now." But Harper's body trembled. Moving meant reliving the truth, reliving the loss, reliving Declan's betrayal. "Silas, what if he doesn't stop? What if he keeps coming?" Silas stepped to her bedside, gently brushing a piece of hair from her forehead. "Then he'll learn he can't touch you anymore. Not physically, not emotionally, not legally." And his voice held something protective, something anchoring, something she'd forgotten existed. Safety. Real safety. The guard signaled 2 additional officers outside. Harper slowly sat up, her legs shaky but determined. As they lifted her IV pole and prepared to move her, she clutched Silas's hand. "Promise me," she whispered. "Promise he won't hurt anyone else because of me." Silas met her gaze, unwavering. "I promise. If we time." But just as they began escorting her into the hallway, another nurse hurried toward them, her face pale, fear flickering in her eyes. "Miss Winslow," she said breathlessly, "you need to know. The woman named Talia, Declan's assistant?" Harper froze. She was admitted earlier tonight. A beat, a breath. "She's in critical condition. And she's been asking for you." Harper's knees nearly buckled. Talia Brooks, Declan's mistress, Declan's confidant. Declan's shield was in the same hospital, fighting for her life. The hallway around her tilted, and Silas tightened his grip on her hand, steadying her before she could collapse. The nurse lowered her voice. "She was brought in less than an hour ago. Severe trauma, internal bleeding. She's conscious, barely, and she keeps asking for you by name." Harper felt her pulse hammering in her ears. "Why me? Why would she want to see me?" Silas answered before the nurse could. "Because she knows Declan's finished using her, and she knows you're the only one who might listen." The security guards guided Harper into a private elevator. Silas stepped inside with her. The nurse swiped her badge, and the elevator began to rise toward the ICU floor. The lights flickered across Harper's pale face. "I never hated her," Harper whispered. "Even when I thought she destroyed my marriage. I never hated her. I just didn't understand." Silas nodded. "And now you might finally get answers." The elevator opened onto a dim, quiet hallway. Machines beeped steadily behind closed doors. Nurses whispered to one another, their movements soft and urgent. The ICU felt like a place where time slowed, where breaths mattered, where truth surfaced when it was too late to lie. The nurse led them to a room near the end of the hall. Talia lay in the bed, barely recognizable. Her hair was matted against her forehead, her skin pale and clammy, her lips split, a bruise darkened one cheek. Her eyes fluttered open when Harper stepped in. "Harper," Talia rasped, struggling to lift her hand. Harper stepped closer, though her body trembled with conflicting emotions, sympathy, fear, resentment, sorrow. She gently took Talia's cold hand. "Talia, what happened to you?" Talia swallowed painfully. I tried to leave him. If you was? Harper froze. Silas's expression hardened. Talia's voice cracked. I told Declan I was done lying for him, done covering the transfers, done taking the blame. Tears welled in her eyes. He said, we were in this together, that if he went down, he'd take me with him. Harper felt her heart drop. Talia, did he do this to you? Talia's breath shook. He found out. I planned to tell the board everything. He cornered me in the parking garage. Her fingers tightened weakly around Harper's. Please, you have to stop him. He won't let either of us go. Silas stepped closer, fierce protectiveness flaring in his eyes. Where is he now, Talia? Did he follow you here? Talia's gaze flickered toward the doorway. No, she whispered. He didn't come alone. Harper's blood ran cold. He brought someone with him, someone dangerous. Harper felt her entire body tense, a cold shiver running down her spine. The fluorescent ICU lights hummed softly overhead, but the room itself felt suspended in dread. Silas stepped closer to Talia's bedside, his posture shifting from concern to calculated alertness. Talia, he said gently, who did he bring? Talia swallowed with difficulty, her words trembling. A man, I've seen him once. Declan called him the cleaner, someone who fixes things that can't be traced. Harper's breath caught. Why would he need someone like that? Talia squeezed her hand weakly. Because you're the only loose end left, Harper, and he thinks you know too much. Silas's jaw tightened with lethal precision. He's not touching her, not here, not anywhere. Talia tried to speak again, but her chest hitched painfully. A nurse hurried in, adjusting monitors as alarms began to beep softly. You should let her rest, the nurse said, casting a worried glance at Talia's faltering vitals. Harper leaned closer. Talia? Is he still in the building? Talia's eyes glistened with fear. Yes. He was right behind me when I tried to escape. I ran into a security guard, and he slipped away. But he's here, Harper, somewhere close. The nurse froze mid-motion. If that's the case, we need to alert security immediately. Silas was already pulling out his phone, his voice low and commanding. I want the entire ICU wing locked down, no one enters without clearance. And get the building's internal cameras, every hallway, every entrance. Harper watched him, stunned by his decisive authority. He didn't just care, he acted. As Talia drifted into unconsciousness, Harper felt a mix of sorrow and guilt. She had spent months hating this woman, blaming her, resenting her. But Talia hadn't been a willing accomplice. She had been trapped, manipulated, fearful. Just like Harper once was. Silas placed a hand on Harper's shoulder. We need to move you to your secure room. Now. But before they could step into the hallway, the overhead lights flickered once, then again casting long shadows that stretched across the ICU floor. Harper's heart slammed against her ribs. What's happening? A voice crackled through the intercom. Code yellow. All units stand by. Unauthorized personnel seen on the lower floors. The nurse paled. That means someone breached the restricted wing. Silas's eyes darkened. He's here. End quote. Harper clutched his arm. Silas, what does he want now? Silas turned to her, voice low but certain. Not what who. A cold realization spread through Harper. Declan wasn't alone, and whoever he brought wasn't here to negotiate. The hallway outside the ICU had transformed from quiet sterility into a battleground of hushed alarms and swift footsteps. Nurses hurried past with clipped instructions. Security officers lined the walls, speaking into earpieces. Harper clung to Silas's arm as he guided her behind a cluster of guards. Stay close, Silas murmured, his voice low but controlled. They won't touch you. Harper nodded, though her pulse pulsed wildly beneath her skin. Why is Declan doing this? He already took everything from me. Silas glanced down at her, the fierceness in his eyes undeniable. Because you're the one thing he can't manipulate anymore. Losing control terrifies men like him. If we are so. A security captain approached, saluting Silas with unexpected deference. Mr. Hawthorne, we've locked down all stairwells and elevators. Only authorized badges can access this floor. Good, Silas said. Find the man who breached. And capture him alive. I want answers. Harper shivered. Capture him alive. This wasn't just hospital protocol anymore. This was Silas taking command of a crisis Declan had created. The captain continued. Our cameras caught the man, dark coat, baseball cap, wearing a mask. He slipped behind a maintenance corridor near radiology. Is Declan with him? Silas asked. The captain hesitated. We can't confirm. But someone matching Declan Merrick's description was seen entering the hospital lobby earlier. Harper's breath hitched. If he's here, he wants something. Silas looked at her with quiet intensity. He wants your silence. The evidence Talia tried to give you would destroy him. The elevator dinged softly, and Harper flinched. A guard immediately stepped in front of her, blocking the opening. It was empty. Harper pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Silas touched her elbow gently. Harper, listen to me. You are not powerless. Not anymore. I will not let him near you. Those words, simple yet certain, sent a warmth through her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. Trust. But before she could respond, a nurse sprinted down the hallway toward them, her face pale. Mr. Hawthorne, Miss Winslow, she gasped. You need to come with me. Now. Silas stiffened. What's wrong? It's Talia, the nurse said breathlessly. She woke up again, and she's panicking. She keeps saying she remembered something important. Harper felt her heart lurch. Something about Declan? The nurse nodded urgently. Not just Declan. She said the man he brought, she recognized him. Ibezing. Tonight. Silas narrowed his eyes. Who is he? The nurse swallowed hard before answering. Someone connected to your past, Miss Winslow. Someone who shouldn't know you even exist. Harper's breath caught as the nurse's words echoed down the hallway. Someone connected to her past? Someone who shouldn't know she even existed? Silas immediately positioned himself between Harper and the rest of the corridor, his protective instincts sharpening. Take us to Talia. Now. I stand. I one of the bound bon. The nurse led them quickly through the ICU. Machines beeped steadily, the rhythmic pulses of fragile lives hanging on threads. When they reached Talia's room, 2 security guards stood outside, tension etched across their faces. Inside, Talia lay trembling, struggling to stay conscious. Her eyes snapped open the moment she heard Harper's voice. You came, she whispered, her throat raw. Harper stepped closer, her own fear tucked beneath layers of calm she didn't feel. Talia, the nurse said, you remembered something. Who was the man with Declan? Talia swallowed hard. His name? Harper, listen carefully. She lifted a shaking hand, gripping Harper's wrist with surprising strength. It's Morgan. Silas stiffened. Morgan who? Talia's gaze flickered toward him, full of dread. Morgan Hale. Silas froze. Harper searched both their faces. Who is Morgan Hale? Silas exhaled shakily. A fixer. A ghost in the industry. Someone who cleans financial crimes, destroys records, intimidates witnesses. He used to work for my father's company decades ago until he vanished after an investigation. No one has seen him in years. Talia nodded weakly. Declan said, Morgan owed him favors. Old favors. Dangerous ones. Harper's blood chilled. Why would someone like that know anything about me? Talia squeezed her wrist again, desperate. Because he knew your mother. It's Mostavam. Harper's entire world stilled, the ICU fading around her. My mother, she whispered. My mother left when I was 12. She disappeared. I never saw her again. Talia's voice trembled. Morgan Hale was connected to her. Declan told me once when he was drunk that your mother ran from something, from someone, and Morgan was the reason she never came back. Silas's expression shifted from shock to fury. Why didn't you tell anyone sooner? Talia's breath hitched. Because Declan said if I ever spoke your mother's name, I'd meet the same fate she did. Harper staggered back, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. The betrayal she'd suffered from Declan was one thing, but this tied her past, her mother, and a criminal fixer into a knot she never knew existed. Silas stepped close, his voice steady but tight. Harper, this isn't just about Declan anymore. This is deeper, older, planned. If not, Talia opened her mouth to speak again, but her monitors suddenly spiked, alarms blaring. Nurses rushed in as Talia gasped for breath. She clutched Harper's hand one last time. "Find the file," he hid. Her voice broke. Her body went still. And with Talia's final breath, the last person who knew the truth slipped away, leaving Harper with a name that could destroy everything. Talia's final words echoed inside Harper's mind like a haunting melody she couldn't escape. "Find the file," he hid. Her hand was still wrapped around Talia's lifeless fingers when a nurse gently pried them apart. Harper stepped back, shaking, her chest tight with grief and fear and a strange, bitter clarity. Silas wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steadying her. "Harper, we'll honor her. We'll finish what she tried to start." Harper wiped her tears. "She died because she tried to help me." "No," Silas said firmly. "She died because Declan believes he can control every outcome. But he's wrong." End quote. Security sealed the ICU room, but Silas guided Harper away, insisting she sit somewhere quiet. He led her to a private waiting area, dim lights, empty chairs, a view of the city blurred by winter rain streaking down the glass. For a moment, Harper let silence settle. Then she whispered, "Silas, what file could she mean?" He rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. If Morgan Hale was involved, it wasn't small. He specializes in evidence. People want erased digital traces, forged signatures, offshore accounts. Harper's stomach twisted. So Declan really did steal that money. More than that, Silas said. If Morgan Hale handled it, the scheme was bigger than Talia ever understood. Harper pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the familiar ache of betrayal, but this time, sharper, clearer. "And my mother, how does she fit into this?" Silas looked at her carefully. "Harper, if Morgan was tied to your mother's disappearance, then Declan approaching him wasn't coincidence. He used someone from your past to hurt your future." The words landed like stones. Harper's eyes stung. "My whole life, every loss, every unanswered question, was part of a chain he pulled." Silas shook his head. "No, Declan pulled some of it, but Morgan, whatever connection he had to your mother, predates Declan by decades. This isn't just Declan's mess, it's something darker. Something inherited." Harper exhaled shakily, gripping the armrest. If Talia hid evidence, it could expose the entire operation. Silas nodded. "And it could free you from everything Declan tried to bury you under." Footsteps approached. The security captain hurried in, face tense. "Mr. Hawthorne, Miss Winslow, we've searched every corridor." The intruder disappeared into the service tunnels. "But we found something." He handed Silas a small object sealed in a plastic bag. A flash drive. Harper's breath caught. "Is that?" "It was dropped near radiology," the captain said, "right where the intruder was last seen." Silas turned the drive over in his hand, eyes narrowing. If this is Talia's missing file, Declan's entire world is about to collapse. But before he could examine it further, the overhead speakers crackled. A panicked voice shouted, "Security to level 3, someone just forced entry into the restricted wing." Silas froze. Harper's heart slammed against her ribs. Declan had found her floor. The announcement thundered through the hospital, speakers like a death sentence. "Security to level 3, forced entry in the restricted wing." Harper's breath caught. Silas immediately pulled her behind him, his arm instinctively shielding her body. The security captain barked orders into his radio, officers dispersing in tense, coordinated movements. "Move her now," Silas ordered, voice hardening into command. "Get Harper to the secure suite." End quote. But the captain shook his head. "We can't move anyone until we know which corridor he entered. If Declan or his accomplice is armed, transporting her puts her at greater risk." Harper clutched Silas's sleeve. "He won't stop, not until he destroys everything I have left." Silas turned to her, his expression fierce yet gentle. "You have more than you think, and he can't take it from you anymore." Her eyes flicked to the flash drive still in his hand. "Silas, if that file contains proof, everything Declan did, every lie, every crime, it'll all come out." "And it will," Silas promised. "But right now, I need to keep you alive to see it." The power flickered overhead. momentarily plunging the hallway into dim emergency lighting. A nurse gasped. Another guard muttered a curse under his breath. "They're trying to disable the cameras," the captain growled. "That's the only reason the lights would drop." Silas's jaw tightened. "He's forcing the building into blind spots. Smart but reckless." Harper pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "He thinks I'll expose him. That's why he came." "He came because he's unraveling," Silas corrected softly. "And desperate men do stupid things before they fall." A sudden crash echoed from somewhere beyond the hallway, metal hitting tile. Guards sprinted toward the sound, radios crackling with overlapping voices. Harper flinched. "That's close." "Too close," Silas muttered. The captain motioned them into a nearby consultation room. Silas positioned Harper behind a rolling privacy screen, then stood in front of her, shoulders squared, every muscle coiled in readiness. "Silas," Harper whispered, her voice wavering. "Why are you risking so much for me? You barely know me." Silas didn't look away from the door, but his voice softened. "Because I've seen what men like Declan do, and because you've lost enough for a lifetime." Her throat tightened. Outside, footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, scraping slightly across the tiles as if meant to be heard. Silas raised a hand, signaling her to stay silent. The shadow under the door lengthened. Then a voice, low, familiar, venomous, slid through the crack. "Harper, I know you're in there." Her blood froze. Declan had found her. But the voice that followed wasn't his. It was deeper, colder, and Harper recognized it from Talia's final warning. The voice outside the consultation room was low, gravelly, unmistakable. Morgan Hale, the man tied to her mother's disappearance. The man Declan had brought to clean up his mistakes. The man who should have never known Harper existed. Silas stepped forward, shielding her fully. "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." Harper clung to the privacy screen, her heart thundering. She heard footsteps, two sets approaching with deliberate intent. The doorknob twitched. Then, freeze. "Security!" Shouting erupted in the hallway. Boots pounded. Someone crashed against a wall. The handle jerked violently, then stopped as a guard yelled, "Get down!" Silas cracked the door open just enough to see. Declan was pinned to the floor, arms twisted behind him. His perfect hair disheveled, his expression feral, like a man watching his empire collapse brick by brick. Nearby, Morgan Hale lay restrained by 3 officers, fury burning in his eyes but powerless under steel restraints. Declan spotted Harper behind Silas. "This is your fault," he screamed. "Everything I lost, everything they'll believe you, over me." Silas stepped fully into the hall, voice cold as ice. "They'll believe evidence." He held up the flash drive. Declan's face crumpled. "You don't know what you're doing. That drive incriminates more than me. It will destroy people." "Only the guilty," Silas replied. Harper stepped out slowly, her hands trembling not from fear this time, but from the final reclaiming of her own voice. "You took my career. You stole my future. You blamed me for crimes you committed. And when you realized I could expose you, you tried to erase me." Her voice steadied. "You didn't just hurt me, Declan. You killed our children." Declan froze, caught between rage and the truth he could no longer rewrite. Guards lifted him to his feet. As they dragged him away, he shouted, "Harper, you think you've won? You think anyone will believe you?" Harper met his eyes for the last time. "They don't need to believe me. They'll believe the proof." And Declan Merrick was escorted out of her life forever. Silas turned to her, his expression softening into something warm, steady, unshakably loyal. "It's over now." Harper exhaled a release years in the making. "Is it really?" "Yes," Silas said, taking her hands gently. "Because you're safe. And because you're not alone anymore." For the first time in years, Harper believed it. Later, as dawn broke across the Manhattan skyline, Silas walked beside her, no chaos, no fear, no shadows. Just healing. Just a beginning she finally deserved. Harper whispered, "Thank you for saving me." Silas shook his head softly. "No, Harper, you saved yourself. I was simply there to witness it." She smiled, steady, whole, reborn. and it was the first morning that truly belonged to her. So, that's how the story closes, my wonderful friends. And if you're still here with me at this moment, it means something in Harper's journey touched a place inside you, a place that remembers pain, but also hopes for healing. Life has a way of breaking us in all the wrong places, but just like the Stoics taught, the obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that every hardship, every betrayal, every loss is not the end, it's the beginning of who we become afterward. Harper didn't survive because life became easier. She survived because she stopped letting cruelty define her worth. Maybe you're carrying your own scars right now. Maybe someone underestimated you, abandoned you, or tried to silence your truth. If so, remember this. You are stronger than the person who hurt you, and your comeback can still rewrite your entire story. Healing isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and often invisible, until one day, you look back and realize you're no longer the same person who cried in the dark. If this journey moved you, even a little, help us keep telling stories that heal. Like, share, and subscribe, not for the algorithm, but so this little community of brave hearts can keep growing together. We're still here. And that means something beautiful is beginning.